Welcome to Ortho Insider, the podcast that goes behind the scenes in orthopedics in Canada. And today I have a very special guest, a very close and dear friend of mine, Dr. Leung. She is the program director of the Orthopedic Surgery Residency program at the University of British Columbia. Hello, Dr. Leung. Thanks for being here.
Thank you so much for having me, Adrian.
We would love to hear, how did you get into orthopedics?
This is a really great question because when people ask me about this, it really talks about the themes of what I think are important, why this speaks to me so much. And I mean, firstly, the subject matter has to be interesting, right? I mean, there's a certain reason that ophthalmologists are attracted to eyeballs and, you know, right? And so I would say for most people who are in orthopedics, like we get a lot of people that are interested in sports, not because you have to be sporty or athletic, but because there's something about movement or joints, the musculoskeletal system that speaks to you. So first of all, it has to be something, you know, the subject matter has to resonate. Yeah. And so I actually trained as a physiotherapist. So I was, you know, sporty. I played all these sports, and then I went to physiotherapy. I loved the anatomy there and just felt it like, you know, I need to be more involved. And so musculoskeletal care and specifically anatomy, that was always something that I was interested in.
Yeah.
So anyway, so that's the first thing, is the subject matter. And the second thing is really about the people that you know and how you relate to people. And so as I went through my physio degree, I worked with a lot of sports teams, got to know a lot of sports medicine doctors, and I thought that that's what I wanted to do. And so when I got into medicine, I touched base with these individuals thinking that they would mentor me, but instead they took me by the lapels and said, actually, you want to be an orthopedic surgeon.
Awesome.
And they walked me around the corner to Dr. Bob Hawkins' office, sat me down and said, you guys meet, you guys work together. And honestly, that was it. He was, you know, really did a lot for me, did a lot in terms of mentoring me, so showing me what this was all about, really showing me that the great aspects of it, how interesting it could be. And then, you know, I mean, really, there's that moment, the moment that everyone talks about when you walk into the OR and you think, this is the way.
Yeah.
You and I have actually had talked about this before,
yeah.
right? About having those couple of areas that intersect where it's personal interest, but also being invited in by someone who has a connection with you, who sees something in you, totally. and you know, it brings you along.
You came into orthopedics at a time where there were not a lot of female surgeons, let alone orthopedic surgeons. Yeah. Tell us about that process and your feelings when someone like the Hawk brought you in and grabbed you by the lapels and said, you're going to do this.
You know, I will tell you very honestly that I never really thought about it.
Yeah. And
it probably was because of that. I was never told, I mean, okay, there was a point where I was told, hey, are you sure you want to do this, being a woman at all? But it was after that feeling of already being accepted.
Interesting.
So that preceding feeling of, hey, you can do this might be something that you're interested in, you know, why don't I help you along and see what this is like and, you know, see we can go with this, came before.
Yeah.
So that probably was like a little bit of identity formation in there.
Cool.
And then so when that identity gets challenged later on, it's easier to put that aside.
Totally. That's so interesting you say that. Do you think that it was because of the belief somebody had in you that you were able to form that identity, or what do you think goes into that?
Oh, that's great, man. We're getting into some real deep stuff here. I wasn't prepared for this at all. Yeah, you know, yeah, that's great. You know, and having kids as well. This is something that I think is really, really important to think about. Is identity formation, identity creation, and you know, I think that generally, you probably had this too. Is that you inherently believe that you are capable.
Yeah.
And so where does that come from? I don't know. It comes from family. It comes from, you know, different experiences that you had. This is also something that we ask when we interview people regularly, not just for orthopedic interviews, but for everything. You know, what is something that you tried to do that was hard, and then you managed, you persevered, and you got through it. You know, that I think that those challenges build resilience and give you a sense of capacity, capability.
Yeah. Totally.
You know, I guess maybe there was part of that, and then all of these other things that you take on, you think, hey, hard is okay. I can do hard. And so when you counter something like medical school and all the exams and, you know, and then residency, even though it's hard, you know you can do it.
Yeah, definitely. Now that you're an orthopedic surgeon, I mean, not only have you succeeded and gotten by, like you've thrived, you're the program director, you're a part of these major associations, and you're doing cutting edge surgery, which is really awesome.
Thank you. I'd say the same of you. Tell me how you got here.
Say more. What was your path? What was your path going through residency and then kind of getting to where you are, and then ultimately becoming a program director? And maybe talk about some of your motivations for doing all that.
Sure. Hey, let's put this right out there. This is not an easy road, right? I mean, wow, there's a lot there. The days are hard, the nights are long and harder, and then you encounter all kinds of people. You encounter people that are great, and you encounter people that are not so great, and sometimes you really literally feel like you're bashing your head against the wall. And I think that ultimately, if you were to step back and say, well, what are the things that are important? Not even the things that make you happy, but what are the things that are important? What makes it the things that you feel valued, that you're making a difference, that are meaningful? You probably come back to certain things, and of course, looking after patients is important. Otherwise, we wouldn't be in healthcare. But second to that is the thing that makes it meaningful for me is the community and the people. And so I will say very honestly that residency probably was one of the most meaningful times in my life. Cool. Not the easiest, not the easiest by far. But the thing that made it great was the connections, the camaraderie, digging through the trenches together, doing something hard together, and the bonds that are formed and helping each other through that was for me very formative. And so community building, and that's probably something that we'll continue to go back to, is the sense of mentorship, community, team working together, the cohabitation of ideas, the cross-pollination.
Totally.
And I would really feel that sense of collaboration and potential.
Yeah, cool.
That makes you feel like, okay, this is a world here, but it's going to get better, it can be better. And that was really felt for me in residency, meeting all these people. And so when I started working, being alone in practice or being in practice, it's hard. Again, it's hard. And how do you form that community again? How do you feel that sense of potential, of movement, of improvement, and help foster that in a sense of others to continue to grow that?
Totally.
So in practice, I kept coming back to teaching. I kept coming to see the residents, to see the people that I trained from, to really establish that sense of connection, community, potential.
And so now you are the residency program director of University of British Columbia Orthopedic Surgery Residency Program. We are now at the 40th year anniversary of the UBC program as a department. What does that mean to you?
Incredible.
And it's crazy. And what does that mean to you? And what do you think are some big milestones that UBC as a residency program historically has achieved?
Sure. Wow. There's so many. It's actually hard to describe it. So first of all, we're so special to be in a department of our own, not under the umbrella of surgery, which really gives us a lot of autonomy in how we drive things. And even in my short time here, I've seen so many changes, and it's great to see how modernized we've become, how much bigger our faculty has become, how much bigger our program has become, the research that's come through here, the international presence that we've achieved has really been quite incredible. I mean, look no further than just even a couple of our head stars when it comes to research to really know the incredible magnitude of what we do here. But I really think it's amazing. It's a testament, I think, to the growing nature of the world, that when I was a resident, there were still people who practiced general orthopedics. It was starting to peter out a little bit, but I really think that we saw that last bit.
Right. And
now the volume of knowledge and skills has just grown so astronomically, and that's not just a UBC thing. That's an everybody thing.
Yeah.
But we continue to have our papers on our names on a lot of those papers, and be driving forth on innovation. We have the advantage of being in Canada, where we do have access to those kinds of things. But I certainly would say that we're at the forefront of new things happening, exciting things happening.
Totally. And if you were to say, put your mark on, hey, this is one thing that I want to achieve during my time as a program director, what do you think that would be?
Sure. There's a lot there. There's a lot there. I mean, Our community's changed, our systems have changed. You know, originally when a couple of years ago, I gave a talk about renovating the House of God, if you remember that book from the 1960s, right? I mean, it's a really old book, and it's interesting because just like any renovation, you talk about what are the values that are important, and what do you need to keep and what you need to change to modernize, make us more flexible, more accommodating, more open to new challenges, more agile, right? Part of that really is to, again, identify our values, but also to challenge dogma and think about what can change, what needs to change in order to respond. You know, I have a colleague who frequently likes to say, well, if you change this, aren't you afraid that blah, 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 blah. And certainly, yes, we should look at those concerns, eyes wide open. But I would actually put forth to you that what you really should fear is staying the same. What you should fear is looking back on yourself 10 years from now and saying, I'm exactly the same person doing exactly 100%. The same thing in exactly the same way, because the world moves. So if I were to say, would put my mark on things, it would be really to keep the things that are important and valuable, but to be able to shift and change in a way that responds to what the needs of the residents are, what the needs of the community are, what the needs of our patients are.
I got to say, from first-hand experience, you're doing a really good job of that and trying to identify where the next kind of future is going to be. And I love your talk today about not just agility, but potential. There's this like hope and potential that kind of permeates, which is really awesome and refreshing, and I think something that's important, especially right now where everything is changing so much. Yeah. And so it also happens to be the Canadian Orthopedic Association's 80th anniversary, which is
incredible too, my goodness.
Crazy, and the timelines seem so fortuitous. And this year's annual meeting is going to be happening in Vancouver, in our backyard. What does it mean? What do you think it means for residents to be involved in these big meetings and maybe getting their names out there?
Yeah. Hey, I mean, again, this is why we're here. This is why I do this. This is why you do this. And really, it's about creating that community and building that potential.
Totally.
There is nothing more exciting to me than sitting there in the meeting, having a light bulb go off where I suddenly understand something, or even better, remember something from some other talk and put something together, some other concept and put together something together. And then turn around and say to someone, hey, did you hear that? I was thinking this, and boom, another idea gets generated. So for one thing, it's about the socialization of different ideas. It's about the generation of new ideas and the enaction of that part. And so that's the ideas, and then there's the people. I mean, what a great place to socialize and really get that sense of community for yourself. The last COA I was at, which was in Halifax, you know, another great meeting. It was a very ambitious academic agenda. But the fascinating thing is I could have easily just stood by the escalator and not moved for the entire day, just with so many people walking through. Hey, I haven't seen you for a while. Let's chat. Let's collaborate. I mean, really talk about. I mean, again, that's the time that I feel the most optimistic about my job, is to see your shining face, telling me about a great idea that you've had or great experience that you've had that I can't wait to go and replicate for myself at home, or you know, even just those special touch points in time where you realize that you're doing this with so many other people. And the challenges that we face are similar. Maybe the successes that we face are similar, but how we share those, how we move forward. You see really, you know, how we are not in our silos when we do these things.
If I may add on that too, there's also that idea not just of creating your communities, but actively harnessing them, and you know, things like, you know, networking and getting jobs, and you know, where am I going to fit in terms of not just necessarily jobs, but you know, research, committees, associations. And now that the COA is so well connected with all the different kind of subspecialty groups, as you mentioned, because we're not really generalists anymore, I mean, there becomes all these opportunities to kind of just make your career really what you want it to be, which I think is really awesome potential.
I'm gonna say your career, your working environment, your healthcare systems. I mean, all of these things are born from again, that cross-contamination of ideas,
Totally.
that ignition of a spark of something, right? I mean, even today we had a specialist committee meeting, and it's really interesting because the first thing that happens is that everybody's problem is identified, and then we understand how widespread this problem is. It's not my problem, it's not your problem, it's all of our problem, and then comes the part, well, what should we do about this? How do we find a solution that's going to work for everybody? That is one of the biggest powers of that meeting.
Cool, that's amazing.
If we want to talk about creating community, we really, and how powerful that is, honestly what you do is really a big part of that, and that's sort of the tip of the iceberg. What we're doing here, and what I've seen you do with so many other people, is that you introduce the conversation, and you're actually now have this reach where you're way outside of the 10 people that we circulate on a regular basis. You're out there in the world, and that piece of community is huge. So it's growing by the moment. And then when you have a touch point like that, where someone sees you on Instagram, and you remember when you came to my hospital, I said, oh hey, Adrian, he came to help me in doing case. And everyone was like, scrubbed.com is coming. So people, you invite that conversation. Right. And then when you have a venue like the COA where there is no separation of cameras, there's you walking up the escalator, and then there's a conversation that happens. I mean, those just really are the pieces of cement that tie us together, right, and join us as an orthopedic community. So I have to applaud you for what you do. It's really
well. No, thank you. And just to be clear, I did not go and help her. I went to learn from her. But I mean, your point is very well taken, because even when I go to those events, I still look forward to, like the fellowship dinners, seeing my mentors, and so I think your point is very well made, that it's just super important to get involved, create that community, however and whatever that looks like, and then the opportunities will come. But I think step one is to get involved and to be out there, and don't be shy about what you want in your career, because everyone's a little bit different. For example, you're also on the board of the CMPA, and that is something that is like a 180 from your job as a residency director, right? So
this is the thing, is that I love all of the things that I do because you learn something different. And I'm just so appreciative of the opportunities that I have, because you'll say, hey, you work in this arena and it's completely diametrically opposite to this, but I'll tell you that I've learned so much from here that I carry into here, and vice versa. So again, that pollination, that just ideas that come from different places, hey, just make everything better. Now, we've sitting here, talked about all the things that it sounds all positive and jolly and everything, but I'll tell you, the times that I've needed my community the most are the times that things are hard. Right? And I've just finished telling you, hey, we had a specialist meeting where we were talking about some of the problems that we have. The people that you're closest to, the people that you feel vulnerable with, are the people that you're going to go to when you're worried, and you're going to be worried a lot, right? And in practice, I'm worried all the time, right? I'm concerned. Should I do this? Should I do this? Have you ever seen this before? I've never seen this before. And so it's not just the ideas; it's the wisdom. It's the support that you get from other people. Totally. Right? I mean, I've called you a couple of times on the fly. Hey, I'm about to do this. I just want to, I've only had a short time to think about this. I need your brain cells on this with me for a moment. And it does. The closer you are to people, the more you have the opportunity to be vulnerable. And you need to be vulnerable in this job. You need to be vulnerable. You need to ask questions. Totally. You need to ask for help.
And when you mention a community too, the wonderful thing is that the community is not just the people who are directly around you. Either you kind of, and I'm not even talking about being online and things like that. I'm more talking about at a meeting, if you saw something awesome, it's so easy to reach out to that person. A quick, hey, saw you're talking to the COA, would love to learn this, need to pick your brain on this, or how do I apply this to my own patients? I mean, you've made it happen directly, and it's just a wonderful, I think it's just another benefit of putting yourself out there, and like you said, being vulnerable. So now that we have this 40-80 situation going on, what are some things that you are hoping the residents can take either out of this conversation or apply to the upcoming COA meeting here in Vancouver?
Absolutely. I often, when I talk to incoming candidates who are applying to a residency program, I often lament the pandemic and the effect that's had on our culture. The very formative moment when you decide that you want to apply for orthopedics, we used to go on the tour, right? And you start the tour, and everyone's super anxious, wearing their ties a little too tight, and they are looking at each other with side glances because you think that they're competitors. And then as the nights progress, the days progress, the nights progress, you travel from province to province, everyone loosens up a little bit.
Totally, that's crazy.
And not only do you become less competitive with one another, but you become firm colleagues.
Totally.
That's before you've even matched.
Totally.
And then after that, every year you go to COA.
Yeah.
And you hang out again.
Yeah.
You rekindle those connections. Yeah. You go to the courses, and again, it's that feeling of knowing these are your first colleagues. These are the first people that you're going to run into. So we've done away with a lot of that.
Yeah.
A lot of the courses online. All of the CARMS application process is done online now. COA is the place.
Yeah.
COA is the place, and I highly encourage people to go. There's the residency, the CORF. Go to CORF, meet your colleagues, go to COA, see the fellows, see your staff, be introduced to different people, introduce yourself to other people, go and have a beverage or dinner or whatever it is that stirs that, that social mixing pot for you as best as possible, and make those relationships. This is most of us, why'd you go into orthopedics? I promise you it starts with a story like that.
Yeah.
It's the story of connection.
Yes, absolutely. One thing I think everyone would love to know is if you have a personal highlight from one of your COA meetings.
I do have a personal highlight. I cannot disclose it without incriminating other people.
Excellent.
It did not happen during the day, and that's pretty much all I can say about that.
Can you give us a hint of who was involved?
No, but they were removed from the facility for wearing somebody else's clothes.
Oh my gosh. Okay, so your goal during the next COA will be to find out who that person is. Oh man, for all of our audience members, that's perfect. It's interesting, to your point, as much as COA is a huge educational event and research event and things like that too, I would also say that most of my foundational memories or core memories are also about afterwards. But one thing I can say though, I distinctly remember one of the later ones, and it was people who really had an impact on my future being out there. Like everyone's just out there at the same time, and it's just, you find your crew, and it's really cool.
We've focused a lot on the social aspect of it, but really, how your brain grows at this is incredible.
Totally,
a lot of great content comes from Canada.
Yes,
and when I go to give talks, I often have a Canada flag on a lot of these things because another great Canadian paper. And I will say this, I know that there's, we're in a particular time right now where there's a lot of patriotism.
Yeah.
But I've always said that a Canadian meeting has a very different flavor than an American one.
Yeah, totally. I agree with you.
Right? Yeah. We're much more evidence-based, that we focus on that. Mm-hmm. That's really important for us to be evidence-based. And there also is not the same sense of bravado that we often see our system just isn't like that, right?
Yes.
We don't rely on personal advertisement in order to make a paycheck. So you and I, even though we're both shoulder surgeons in the same area, we do not compete.
Correct.
And when there is that there's no sense of competition, we have that opportunity to collaborate and make each other better for it, and we all grow. I don't knock your knees out. Yeah. And so that's really the feeling that you see, not just the feeling in the meetings, but from the papers and from the advice that you get. It's not self-serving. It's truly in an effort to make make healthcare, make your practice better.
Absolutely, and for kind of any of the trainees or anybody else out there, I also still remember one of my, first podium presentations, and then afterwards, people actually take notice because you're on the podium, you're saying something that's evidence-based, you're adding to the literature in a positive way, and then all of a sudden, these people who you look up to are saying, hey, I loved your talk, can you tell me more about that? And to your point, there is no kind of bravado, I can't learn from this, whatever trainee.
People don't undercut you.
Correct. Yeah, it's a wonderful way of putting it, right? They're trying to, hopefully see your potential, right? That seems to be the theme of the talk. That's awesome. Yeah. But on that note, do you have any tips for residents attending these conferences and what they should be doing or looking out for?
Oh, sure. Obviously there's the educational content that's really important, right? So you go to the talks, you go to the things that are important. Yeah. My personal favorite thing to go to, though, I love controversy. I love it when there's 3, 4, 5 different ways to think about a problem, and so I encourage you to see the debates.
Yes.
I think that's always a really good one when there's a debate. I also think it's a really great one when there's complications. Yeah. So there's a couple of sessions usually about my worst complication, and actually, you learn so much by seeing things go right.
Yeah.
You learn so much more when things go wrong.
Totally.
And I would say that when you're in residency, when you're in fellowship, is this wrong to say that I would feel like this when something went wrong? Because when you're doing surgery, something's going to go wrong.
Yeah.
How are you going to bail yourself out?
Totally.
What are the steps that the person went through to think about how to prepare to mitigate some of these issues? And then once they happen, what are your bailout strategies?
Filling your toolbox.
Filling your toolbox.
Yeah.
So professionally, those are the things that I would look for. Academically, those are the things that I would look for, and of course the topics that are particular subspecialty interest for you.
Awesome.
For residents, I really think that some of these practice building things are also really important.
Yes.
And they're something that you won't get elsewhere, right? Because Canadian specific practice guidelines, the infrastructure is very specific to Canada.
Totally.
And so there's a couple of really great sessions like that. So
awesome.
those are good things to look for. And then when you're talking about where you're going to work, what you're going to work, I mean, again, tapping into your people to introduce you and make those connections across Canada. Of course, that's something that we're there to do too.
Totally.
And so here we are. We're going to plug it. If there's someone you want to meet that we know, you come up to us and we will help you.
Make an intro for sure. Absolutely, we'd be happy to do that 100%. So before we leave, for the residents out there, what is a question on the interview that you think people could answer better? And how would you answer that particular question?
Oh, great. Yeah. One of the questions that I think people could answer better is always, why do you want to go into orthopedics?
Interesting.
Yeah. I mean, firstly, I think it's very interesting to me that question takes people by surprise. Right? I mean, this is your introduction.
Yeah.
This is your door. The door is opening for you to go into this place that presumably you want to go.
Right.
So maybe you would have had some thought about why you want to go through that door.
Absolutely.
So that question is important.
Yeah.
That question, what does that question mean? Right?
Yeah.
And that question for us really is a surrogate for, hey, tell us about something about you, about your personal journey, something that you think is, why does orthopedics speak to you? Why do we speak to you?
Yep.
Or do we speak the same? It's a question of how you relate to orthopedics, how you relate to our community, how you relate to this particular job.
Yeah.
And it really is an opportunity to be a little bit personal here.
Yeah.
Right?
Totally.
So many people will say, oh, well, I like fixing bones, I like making people better, and of course, yes, that should be there.
Yeah.
But in there's also a personal story.
Yes.
And
yes,
oftentimes,
yes.
I have my own curiosity.
Yeah.
I love to hear it.
Yeah, totally. It is that first step into making that community and that personal connection.
Yeah.
Yeah, amazing. If somebody wants to contact you or reach out to you or find out more about the UBC Orthopedic Residency Program, how do they do that?
Sure. Well, first of all, you go onto scrubbedout.com.
Nice.
And you find us.
Amazing. Yes. Find our webinars. Yeah. Find our live streams. Yeah.
But honestly, I'm so imminently reachable. You just have to Google UBC Orthopedics Program, and then I think Tom's email's on there, so that's our admin person, and he's happy to connect us. And of course, every year we do a couple of sessions, information sessions for incoming residents or incoming candidates through our own site, our own event that we put on, our virtual open house, and through COSNET.
Yeah, amazing. Okay, yeah, amazing. Thank you so much. I really appreciate you being here. It's always a pleasure, and we'll see you at
The COA.
Vancouver.